What's up, transgenders? It's Makiana, and I'm finally back with another video. And today's video, I wanted to rank Sematary's discography because I've done the one on Buckshot. That was quite a while ago. I know my upload schedule's all fucked up, but I just said screw it. Why not do a video on Sematary as well? And instead of just focusing on one album like I did with Buckshot, I'm going to rank Sematary's entire discography from Gravehouse to King of the Graveyard. From worst to least, of course. And no, I will not be providing any scores for these albums. But just know, in my opinion, I do believe that everything that Sematary's dropped is, at the very least, good. So yeah. And to start the list, Sematary's worst album is Screaming Forest. Now, it's not that it's bad. It's just that it is so uncreative and it can get a bit boring at times. For me, this album is just like a more accessible version of Rainbow Bridge 3. It's really just less everything. Like, it's not as abrasive, it's not as noisy, it's not as loud. It just comes off as a bit lazy to me. He just dropped a bunch of songs that sound good, but they don't really do enough to have that replayability. It just didn't feel like he wanted to drop something new or unique. He just wanted to drop something, and that's kind of the problem. He just wanted to get something out. The hooks on here are lacking, and lyrically, you obviously know what you're going to get from Sematary, and all the songs really just sound the same. Now, that's not to say that this album has zero bangers on here, because you have Longhorns, Comma Crazy, Scarecrow, and Willows, which is the best song on this album. So all in all, this album is good. It doesn't really have any lows, but it also doesn't reach the highs that his other releases do. And next up on the list is King of the Graveyard. Now, much like Screaming Forest, I don't think this is like anything special, but he's definitely trying a lot harder on here than he was on Screaming Forest, especially with the production. Like, Screaming Forest does sound like the PG version of Rainbow Bridge 3. He kind of ramps it up on to like PG-13 on this motherfucker, because like the 808s on these songs, dude, they're just hitting unusually hard on here. Like, for every song on here, it just feels like once the beat drops, it's more like a kick to the chest. And that is just not there for Screaming Forest. The songs on here are just super catchy, especially Cutter in the Club and I Don't Care About Sleep Anymore, where like he's like drawing out his vocals. Like, I don't know why he doesn't do that more often on some of his songs. Like, he could make his songs sound so much better at times if he just drew out his vocals more. He'd be scared as fuck to use his voice sometimes. I don't know why, dog. But I will say the highlight of the album isn't even Sematary. It's Turnabout's verse on 3 AM Gang, which to me is not surprising because Turnabout always kills his features, and that's no different here. All in all, this is a pretty good EP. Just feels like something to hold us over into the next album. And up next we have Butcher House.
Burn that fucking pig alive. Only good cop is a dead cop.
And currently, as it stands, I have this as the best post Rainbow Bridge 3 release. And the reason I bring up Rainbow Bridge 3 is because everything after Rainbow Bridge 3 just sounds like he's trying to make Rainbow Bridge 3 again, but make it more accessible. But Butcher House is the perfect execution of that. And I guess on this album, Sematary just remembered how to make hooks, because the hooks on this album make the hooks on Screaming Forest look absolutely abysmal. He changes up his flow and his voice a lot more, so it's just not him in like his super deep monotone voice trying to sound like Chief Keef the whole time, which is a big reason why Screaming Forest got boring at times. And I just like the features on here more. Like, obviously you have the Buckshot feature on Screaming Forest, but the two features that Hackle Down has on Screaming Forest, he damn near just sounds like Sematary. But his two features on here, he just goes fucking hard. So I don't know why he wasn't rapping like that before. But he didn't go harder than Buckshot, because Buckshot is always going to have the best feature on any album he's on. So it is what it is. And the production on here is absolutely fantastic. It's got some of the best stuff that Sematary has ever produced. Like Hatin' Gasolina has that sweet lead guitar, and Little Lamb is like one of those classic Sematary ballads. It just sounds absolutely insane. And I also have to mention Grimoire, Gonerville, and Oscar 18, who also produced some amazing beats on here. All in all, this is a great album from Sematary, but I do think it's time for him to try a new sound, experiment a bit more, reinvent himself, because like, nigga, you can only be Gen Z white Chief Keef for so long. And next up on here is Warboy, and I think anything past this point is just going to be peak Sematary. And I hate having to put this so low, but something has to go here. I guess I can just say that Warboy is pretty much just Rainbow Bridge 2, but shorter. Which is not an insult in the slightest, because these don't feel like Rainbow Bridge 2 Lucy's. They just feel like they could have been on Rainbow Bridge 2. I guess what I will say is the hooks on here are pretty repetitive. It's literally just him repeating the song name over and over again, but I don't care, dude. And of course we have some great samples on here. My favorite one probably being the Danzig Mother sample on AK-47. And I also want to believe that he's paying homage to the Misfits with Skulls, because the chorus to that song and the chorus to the Misfits song is literally the same thing. And the song that I really appreciate, a song that I think is just hella underrated, is Red Bull Addict. As a Red Bull addict myself, it really just speaks to me on a emotional level. But my favorite song on here would have to be Forever Box. I just love the way he flows and writes the beat on here. And there's not a single person that can tell me that Ego Mackey's verse doesn't go hard. It's like the perfect play filter. Very similar to Curb Lagoob's verse on Red Drop Shawty. All in all, it's a great EP with a bunch of bangers on it. And next up is 100 Acre Wrist. Man, I remember listening to this the minute it dropped and live tweeting it with a bunch of mutuals. Great fucking times. But this is the last collaborative release with Ghost Mountain, and aside from one song on Rainbow Bridge 3, this is the last we're ever going to hear from him. And man, they for sure made it count, because Sematary is just producing his ass off on here. Some of his most hypnotic, creative, and head-banging beats he's ever made. And in my opinion, the two best produced songs on here are Nazgul and Dear God. And they're also just rapping their asses off on here. Like, the best part about the Sematary Ghost Mountain combo is that you get Sematary with his raspy, deep, monotone voice, and Ghost Mountain, whose voice is just angelic as fuck and has that melodic flow. And lyrically, they're also different, because Sematary is usually your straightforward, crazy guy who's just gonna say some like hella violent shit. And Ghost Mountain is like poetic and cryptic, while also saying some super violent shit. And it's just so hard for me to tell who has the best verse on each song, to where I'm just like, fuck it, they both have the best verse. Ghost Mountain's Goodbye Horses cover is peak, but songs like Nazgul, Dear God, and Tourniquet would have to be my favorite songs on here. I almost forgot the DJ Sorrow intros. Those are really fucking sick. I love those. This album just has the sound and the vibe of being a farmer on like a ranch or something, which is why Cleaver Valley is the best way to end this. It's like a really fucking sick country song. I love it. 100 Acre Wrist is a terrific blend of a bunch of different genres, such as Chicago drill, witch house, horrorcore, and emo. And next up we have Rainbow Bridge 3. Another one of his albums I remember live tweeting when it came out. And first listen, this shit was just legit mind-blowing. One of the most unique and abrasive albums ever made. It is so fucking loud. And it's pretty much what Sematary's music is trying to be now, but just more accessible, really. Now, this album had 4 singles, I believe, and the first 2 being Creeping Through the Woods and Chainsaw Party. And those gave us just a small little taste of what was to come. Then Necromancer and Skin Mask 2 came out, and man, they were just completely different from what I was expecting. Like, Necromancer is just so fucking loud, and the chorus is literally just him repeating Necromancer over and over and over again, but it's just oddly soothing and hypnotic for some reason. and Skin Mask 2 is just insane. It's possibly the closest he's ever gotten to making real, legit, raw black metal. And it's not even just those two songs. Every song, every single song on here sounds so distorted and deep fried to the point where it's just noise almost. The chorus on God's Light Burns Upon My Flesh is so ear-rattling, your fucking eardrums may burst open and start bleeding listening to this. I still have no idea what's going on the song Meet Me by the River. There is just so much going on, especially on the chorus. I don't even know how he made that. I'm a Sinner has to be the most fucked up sounding drill song I've ever heard. He's got some sick ass lyrics on here, but the chorus is literally, half of it is just him screaming his head off. Going Mortem is great. It has Ghost Mountain's last verse, and it just feels like a goodbye verse because of the lyrics and stuff. It's kind of sad, honestly. And personally, I would say the easiest, most accessible song on here is possibly Truey Jeans, maybe Chainsaw Party. Not that that's saying much, to be honest, but you know, those are just a few songs I wanted to touch on. But the entire album just has so much going on. It's possibly the best attempt at maximalism in music, other than Ever Since by Blade, of course. But yeah, there's absolutely nothing like this. And if you want tinnitus, I recommend you just bang this album in max volume. You'll love it. And now we're finally getting into the top 3. And 3 is Rainbow Bridge 1.
I've been in the night, racing up the dead. Do not fuck with me, get some reverence. I will leave you down on the Rainbow Bridge. I'm posted up, grave men till the end.
This is Sematary's first solo effort. And bro, it is damn near fucking perfection. Just by the way that he flows, you can tell this nigga is a Chief Keef worshipper. He just like me for real. The white black metal Chief Keef label was just something that clicked in everyone's minds when they first heard him, I feel like. Either way, on here, his lyricism can get a bit goofy at times, which, for some people, is a bit off-putting. Not for me, though. I love his over-the-top, violent, mystical, spooky, and melancholic lyrics. He's such a talented songwriter, and he's just a white boy for real. Same can be said about Ghost Mountain, who has that angel voice, which makes him the perfect contrast to Sematary. I am just in love with the production on here, as he samples Apathy, Shoo Shoo, Woods of Desolation, Life Lover, and the greatest band of all time, Title Fight. Every song has that super depressive and nihilistic atmosphere, made even better by the fact that him and Ghost are about to rap about some mystical violent shit or something hella emo that's going to make you think about life. I would say there's about 4 or 5 songs that I get that emo vibe from, but the 2 main songs that give me that vibe is Pain and Reverence, especially Pain with like the lyrics about self-harm and dying. It's just some really relaxing shit to listen to. With that being said, this album's blend of Chicago drill and DSBM influences, along with how amateurish it sounds, makes this album so special to me. It's such a unique and incredible experience. And next up on the list, at number 2, is Rainbow Bridge 2. Now this album does what Rainbow Bridge 1 did, but improves on every aspect of it. And what really does it for me is Sematary's use of autotune and him drawing out his vocals more. It really adds a hypnotic vibe to the album. Sematary also seems more confident without Ghost Mountain to help him on every song. Of course, Ghost Mountain is on multiple songs on here, along with 2 other features from Juju and Slug Christ, but Sematary's solo songs on here are just better than his solo songs on Rainbow Bridge 1. Sematary isn't afraid to use more flows. While he is still deadpan as fuck on here, he's not afraid to use his voice more. Plus, his hooks are much improved. Even with all that, he's still able to keep the gritty, nihilistic DIY vibe his early music had. He may have cleaned up his rapping a bit, but trust me, this shit still sounds like a horror movie. Still sampling some of the best black metal bands of all time, such as Dark Throne, Make a Change, Kill Yourself, Life Lover, Woods of Desolation, and Burzum. And still rapping about those over-the-top acts of violence, killing cops, drinking energy drinks, being hella emo, references to horror movies and folklore. I don't know how to say it, but it just feels authentic, I guess. Not like he actually goes out and does this shit, but he just sounds like a crazy guy telling crazy ass stories and shit. It just has a certain edge that his newer music is missing, to be completely honest. And with that being said, this is a classic. This album has an undeniable atmosphere, and I guess I'll give it a funny comparison. This is Sematary's Bang Apart 2. Okay, now finally, at the end of the list, we've got Grave House.
War boys destroyed off gasoline. Ghost mountain coming out the smoke screen. Nothing matters, I'ma go hard anyway. I'll be in the woods spitting on your grave. Black skulls ride through.
This is one of those albums that I just remember the first listen so vividly. Like, this album holds such a special place in my heart. But with this being Sematary and Ghost Mountain's debut, this sounds so amateurish. Starting with the production, it has like these really simple beats sometimes. Like, I don't want to call them simple, but it's really just a witch house synth, 808, plug drums. It's either that or black metal sample, 808, plug drums. Compared to his newer stuff, this is like really skeletal or like minimal type stuff. And how poorly mixed the vocals can be sometimes. To even just how they rap or how they sing. Like, for the most part, the rapping and singing isn't, like, it doesn't even sound right. Like, it just sounds like they're talking at like a regular voice, damn near. I guess the best way I can describe it is they're like two trailer park edgelords trying to record this with their door closed so their mom doesn't notice. Which, to a lot of people, that sounds absolutely lame as fuck, but not to me. But in reality, it's that authentic DIY feel at its best, if you ask me. The lyrics are also edgy as fuck. Like, I feel like there are at least 4 or 5 references to killing cops on each song. And obviously, like you see on the cover, they got their box cutters rapping about their energy drink addiction, references to murderers, mythical creatures, and other folklore. There's still a couple of songs that have like a really emotional vibe to them. Those songs being Orbs and Goatman. They're just really relaxing to listen to. And what I said about 100 Acre Wrist is pretty much the same here. I can't really tell who has the best verse on each song, but Ghost Mountain by far has the best verse on Broken Angel Hospital. His verse on Broken Angel Hospital is one of the greatest things to ever happen in the history of music. Honestly, I feel like Grave House expresses teen angst in like a very unique way. Kind of in the same vein as the 2000s emo bands like Hawthorne Heights or From First to Last, where it's super over the top emotional, like no one understands me type shit. So instead of it being expressed in like a depressive and somber way, teen angst on this album feels like it's being expressed in a more rebellious and violent way. Sorry, I don't know, I feel like I could have explained that better, but also I just feel like Grave House just came out at the right time. I just feel like Grave House couldn't drop today and it gets so popular. There was just definitely something in the air from late 2019 to early to mid 2020. I guess it was probably fucking COVID. Lockdown definitely had motherfuckers pissed as fuck. So it kind of makes sense why this album got so popular. But to get back to my point, Grave House just feels like a release of so many emotions in such a extreme yet also real and relatable way. Grave House is also kind of helped by the fact that this was before Sematary developed like his current online persona. Back then he was just a guy, you know? And it just seemed like all the shit that he was saying just felt like it was coming from his heart, you know? Now some of the shit that he says can seem a bit forced, I guess. Anyways, with that being said, Grave House is one of the best albums ever. Such a beautiful, beautiful piece of art. I am so glad that it exists. And that does it for the video. Thanks for hearing me yap about Sematary for damn near 20 minutes. If you're still here, I love you. I appreciate that. Like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more shit, I guess. Also, drop a comment. Drop a comment for sure.